This house has been given to my parents, actually, so we are also considering divorce. I feel there is no need for relationships anymore. James was staring at me and gave me a sheer order to get out of the house. The insults at me didn't stop from his mouth. His parents appeared to condone his happiness by what they did not say, for neither offered any comment on their son. But their words did not make me falter at all. I meekly nodded, quietly consenting to vacate the gutted home. Inside me, there was a well-thought-out plan. With the luggage I had prepared beforehand, I left the house without hesitation. They still hadn't realized the gravity of the situation that awaited them. My name is Emily. I just turned 50. A long time has passed since our marriage. Our children have become independent and live away from us. I used to lead an ordinary salaried worker's life, but now, through a friend's introduction, I spend fulfilling days as a teacher of handmade accessories, which was my hobby. This new job has become a turning point in my life. Through interactions with my students, sharing the joy of crafting, every day has become fulfilling. Some people might have negative opinions about turning a hobby into a livelihood, but I am very satisfied. James and I met by chance at the company where I used to work. He was employed at a client company at that time, and we started to meet often through work-related social gatherings. Gradually, as we got to know each other, the distance between us shortened naturally. We deepened our relationship and eventually chose to marry as a result of our love. After spending 3 years of marriage, a healthy and energetic boy blessed our family. Utilizing his intelligence, he graduated from a well-known university in our country. Afterwards, he got a job in a top-tier company in the industry, and now he is living happily with his beautiful wife. As parents, being able to see our son's happy life is our greatest joy. However, contrary to our son's prosperous life, the relationship between us as a couple became harder to feel happy about. A number of years swiftly passed since our marriage. Around the time our son took his first step into society, James started showing changes in his behavior. The once gentle and considerate James was nowhere to be found. "Emily, hurry up and prepare dinner." Gradually, he began to see me as nothing more than a housemaid, always demanding things in an authoritative tone. What troubled me the most was his daily changing demands and preferences. "The tomato soup is too strong," he complained. So I made it light-flavored the next day. "Now it lacks flavor," he shouted. One time, intentionally, I served the miso soup with the same taste for several days, yet he continued to whine that it was too strong or too light based on his mood. I realized that he wasn't concerned about the taste. He just wanted to complain and trouble me. Such childish behavior only left me dumbfounded. Lately, James has been getting easily angered, blaming me over trivial things, and the instances of verbal abuse have been increasing. I've been wanting to escape this life and start anew strongly. Lately, I often wondered what caused James to change this much. However, I cannot leave this place. I have a mortgage that hasn't been paid off yet, tying me down. Despite this, James suddenly quit his job without giving a clear reason and now lazes around the house all day. Naturally, he hardly lifts a finger to help with the daily chores and housework. When I come home from work feeling the fatigue of the day, it's usual to find alcohol snack packaging and trash scattered all over the floor. Amidst all this, I manage to maintain the household with the salary I bring home. Actually, the house we live in was recently rebuilt, and I funded it all. Managing the finances of the household, I saved bit by bit for the house's reconstruction. This house is what I worked hard to build. Therefore, I didn't want it to fall into James' hands if I left. Of course there's the mortgage issue, but this house also embodies my wishes and aspirations. It's a house I had built with detailed instructions, choosing every aspect of it. Among those, I take pride in the spacious kitchen area. It's very easy to move around while cooking, making the cooking experience enjoyable. Initially, James had quite a bit of input on the house's design and layout. I'm covering all the costs for building this house, so I want my wishes to be respected, I told him. After hearing that, James stopped giving his opinions. Over several months, we faced various challenges and unexpected issues, but eventually, the house we desired was completed. Though it was tough to achieve everything within budget, not all of my desired features and details could be incorporated. This house still fulfilled our dream. I felt a deep sense of joy about this reality. However, the cost of construction greatly exceeded our initial estimates, leading us to take on a much larger loan than expected. Taking on such a substantial loan in our 50s was something we hadn't imagined. But thinking about the happiness of our new home gave us the energy to overcome this burden. On the other hand, James seemed a bit sulky because his opinions and wishes were not well reflected in the house design. This isn't necessary, Nier. It's like throwing money down the drain. While I kept ignoring his complaints and grumbles, he gradually stopped talking to me. Instead, he began scattering trash around the house and leaving things disorganized to irritate me. His childish behaviors started to become noticeable. Such actions probably came from his discontent. I wondered when this life would end. I spent every day pondering such thoughts. A few months had passed since we moved into the new house when suddenly, one day, the doorbell rang. We weren't expecting any visitors that day, so I had no idea who it might be. As I was preparing to go to the front door, James got up and headed there before me. Maybe he knew who was coming. After a while, cheerful voices and laughter leaked from the entrance. The moment the door to the living room slowly opened, I saw the faces of the visitors. What could it be? My father-in-law and mother-in-law. Yes, the unexpected visitors were my in-laws, Harold and Alice. To be honest, I always felt pressured in my relationship with them. When we first announced our marriage, they treated me coldly as a woman of lower social status and criticized me quite harshly. Even on our wedding day, they assessed me with an awkward attitude. Their interference continued even after the marriage, and I always wondered how to interact with them each time. I had thought there had been some change or settling down as we hadn't been in touch for a while, but their sudden visit like this surprised me. It's been a long time. I greeted them politely, with slight tension, but they passed by me without a word. It seemed like they intentionally ignored my presence, bumping into my shoulder as they passed. What do you think? Amazing house, isn't it? You should take a look around room by room, James said. It's indeed a wonderful home. I'm envious that you can live in such a place. The kitchen is especially spacious and looks easy to use, said Harold. Yeah, impressive. You've got yourself a good house. Afterward, James passionately showed his in-laws around the house. When they returned, the expressions on the in-laws' faces seemed to be clearly satisfied. However, on the other hand, James' expression was stern, and he suddenly raised his voice in anger towards me. What are you doing? Hurry up and prepare some tea and snacks. My parents are waiting. Overwhelmed by his words, I hurriedly prepared tea and served the snacks I bought the other day. In front of James's parents, I couldn't prepare anything special for their unexpected visit, but I offered the best of what I had. Yet the in-laws looked dissatisfied with the snacks I gave them, and Harold commented with a tilt of his head. Is this the best hospitality you could provide, given that we were coming? He asked coldly, adding on, just as I expected. Although I thought it might be different this time, despite complaining, they quickly finished the snacks and tea. Harold, looking around the interior of the house, commented appreciatively. "This is quite a nice house. It seems like a nice place to live," he said with a broad smile. James said to them, "Dad, Mom, you're always welcome here. If you want, let's live together here." They, almost ignoring me, listened to James's words and left. Watching their retreating figures, I felt a large gap between James and me. Seeing James chatting and laughing joyfully with them was something I hadn't witnessed in a long time. Afterward, responding to James's invitation, the in-laws began visiting our house more frequently. Initially, it was a few times a month, but gradually it became several times a week, and eventually almost daily. Every time, their criticisms towards me never ceased, and James showed no signs of stopping them. James's attitude of blaming me, along with his parents', intensified. "She never listens to what I say. Honestly, it's annoying. I felt that way before. Emily, what do you plan to do about making our sons suffer so much?" Harold said, "I had not thought about any of this at all. In fact, I was the one facing difficulties due to them every day. However, I couldn't voice the shouting in my heart. Instead, all I could do was utter words of apology." The visits from the in-laws were increasing beyond anticipation, and they began to visit more frequently during my absence. When they deemed I was not home, they visited along with James, but it was clear what they were doing. At home, every time I got back home, cans of beer and empty bottles were scattered everywhere. The traces of spilled alcohol soaked into the new rug, and my heart continued to ache. Why do this? It's a new house, but it smells like alcohol and it's dirty. I don't want any more damage. I said, "You always complain despite not being of any help. You're too cheeky. Your job is just to make money and to strictly follow what I say. Don't you understand that?" James retorted. Even though he says that the money used to buy the alcohol was earned by me working tirelessly, I couldn't agree with James's way of thinking. James not only indulged in alcohol, but seemed to have ventured into gambling as well, filling my heart with constant worry. Sometimes I would see remnants of used betting slips on the living room table or tucked in the sofa corner. Every time I tried explaining to James the risks of gambling and its impact on our finances, we were already in a tough economic situation, and the losses from gambling were a big blow to us. Moreover, thinking that the money used for gambling was earned by me through hard work made my heart ache even more. It's almost a month since the frequent visits from the in-laws started. Astonishingly, they targeted the time when I was out to visit our home. I wondered every day how to escape this difficult situation. One day, after finishing my work early and heading back home, I found the in-laws leisurely spending time in our home. "What are you doing?" I asked. Surprised, I raised my voice. Reacting to my voice, the in-laws stared at me for a moment and clicked their tongues in displeasure. From their attitude, I felt as if my presence was bothersome to them. Yet this house is mine. There's no reason for them to intrude like this. On top of the complex interactions with James, the frequent interference from the in-laws increased my stress day by day. No matter how patient one might be, there's a limit to everything. Facing the insolent attitudes and actions of James and his parents, I finally reached my limit. However, I realized that instead of just getting emotional, it was necessary to come up with a plan, and I decided to carefully make one. Amidst all this, something very unusual happened. At a time when I was supposed to be out, the in-laws visited. "Hello, this is unusual. You usually avoid coming when I am here. What's different today?" I greeted them. Against my slightly sarcastic greeting, the in-laws showed a bit of an annoyed face. "We didn't choose the time to come when you are here. It just happened," Alice said. Same old face as usual, the snarky words and attitude of these two made me sigh internally. Yet they pushed me aside and boldly stepped into the living room. "Hey, been waiting for you," James said with a smile. James welcomed his parents-in-law and promptly led them to the kitchen. As I quietly followed them, I noticed the shoes recklessly thrown at the entrance. They seemed to have taken complete ownership of this house, which was very displeasing. In the kitchen, Alice was holding the latest kitchen gadgets and appliances, examining them with interest. "New things are really better. With a kitchen like this, cooking will be more enjoyable," Alice said. "Yeah, the food prepared here would surely taste special," Harold added. As they finished inspecting the kitchen, Harold suggested the next place. "Well, let's head to the bathroom next," he declared. The three of them started walking towards the bathroom. Being able to sense some plan behind the actions of my in-laws, I kept an eye on their movements. Especially the meticulous checks they were conducting inside the house hinted at some hidden agenda. Even when they left the house again, they wore satisfied expressions as if they had confirmed something. "What were you inspecting? Is there something you should tell me?" I asked James. "I told you not to worry. It's none of your business," James replied. James's behavior hinted at hiding something from me. On top of that, I suspected he was trying to manipulate me cunningly. Grasping the real intention was tough, and I had no choice but to observe the situation. Then one day, when I returned home from work, there was a large moving truck parked in front of our house. I immediately understood it belonged to a company called Moving Center. James was seemingly discussing something with the truck driver and representatives. When our eyes met, he pretended not to see me and disappeared inside the house. What shocked me more was that my in-laws arrived at our home at the same time. "Oh, Emily, you're back early. Come on in, Harold," they said. "Right, we can't waste time out here." Their behavior and conversation indicated that they were about to execute some pre-planned action. Though anxious, I decided to quietly wait and see what would happen next. Feeling overwhelmed by the atmosphere, I sensed the somewhat hurried gazes of my in-laws, but entered the house anyway. With each step, I noticed that almost none of the interior I knew remained. Instead, the familiar furniture and belongings of my in-laws had been arranged as if this were their home. My favorite desk and shelves had disappeared without a trace, as if erased with an eraser. In their place, my in-laws' dated furniture stood arrogantly. As I sat down on the sofa, the three of them surrounded me with smirky smiles on their faces. There was a smugness to their smiles, and I could see they were trying to toy with me. "Listen carefully, there's something I need to tell you," James said. "What do you mean?" I responded, bracing myself internally, but with a faint calmness. He sighed deeply and, with a troubled expression, continued his speech. "The truth is I've sold this house to my parents, and I can't imagine living here together anymore. I think we should get a divorce." As if to complement his words, Harold and Alice also nodded, sending me stern glances. There seemed to be some unspoken understanding among the three of them, leaving me isolated in the situation. From their behavior and words, I could see their plan to sideline me and claim this house as theirs. Having sensed their covert plans, I remained unfazed even when James suddenly announced his intention to divorce. I promptly signed the divorce papers as if I had anticipated this and quietly placed the wedding ring, which I had worn since our marriage, on the table. Staring at James and my in-laws' faces, I declared my intention to leave the house. Since I had anticipated this and planned, I had imagined how shocked James and my in-laws would be, but witnessing it gave me a sense of satisfaction. The fact that I had perfectly seen through their plan and acted accordingly felt like a small victory to myself. With that, I left the house with their astonished faces in the rear view to step into the first phase of my new life. I had been having suspicions about the unnatural behaviors of James and my in-laws, especially since my in-laws started visiting frequently when I wasn't home. I felt that they might be secretly planning something. In response, I was searching for ways to confirm it when the idea of installing surveillance cameras came to mind. Initially, I hesitated, thinking it was excessive to have such arrangements among family. However, as the stress and mistrust grew day by day, I decided to install cameras in concealed spots around the house. These cameras were synced with my smartphone, allowing me to check on the house even when I was out. On the first day after the cameras were set up, I peeked into the live feed on my smartphone during my work break. There was nothing unusual in the footage that day. It seemed like James and his parents were just engaging in daily conversation. However, the contents of that conversation wounded my heart. I can't believe my son is going through such hardships. She really lacks a sense of gratitude. It's awful how she's making James suffer so much, one of them said. In their conversation, I felt sorrow and anger at the fact that they completely ignored the truth that I was the one supporting our family financially. Since the day I installed the cameras, this thought often crossed my mind. If I were to leave this house, how would James and his parents sustain their living? With such thoughts, I stumbled upon footage one day where James and his parents seemed to be discussing something joyfully. Curious about their conversation, I checked the audio more closely. What was revealed was more shocking than I had anticipated. James was seriously considering selling the house to his parents. Initially, I thought it was just a joke or a whimsical remark, but subsequent footage showed that the discussion about selling the house continued for several days. His parents seemed very interested, passionately discussing the arrangement of new furniture, and especially about making the house barrier-free, which is essential for their age group. After reviewing this footage, I decided to think about the next steps. First, I began searching for a new residence for myself and decided to move forward according to James and his family's actions and plans. Based on the information obtained from the surveillance cameras, I also initiated the process of transferring the home loan from my name to James's. If they were planning to oust me from this home, I thought they should take over the mortgage payments and the associated responsibilities. The monthly mortgage payment of $1,900 was being paid out of the salary I earned from working hard every day. I doubted that James and his parents could afford to pay this amount every month, so I made up my mind. No matter how hard it gets for them, I decided not to provide any financial assistance. Freed from the troublesome relationship with James and his family, I moved to my new home. It was well arranged with new furniture, ready for me to start my new life as soon as I arrived. After a long day, I sank into bed, feeling a pleasant fatigue. The next day was a day off, and I was genuinely relieved at the thought of being able to rest thoroughly. When I woke up, it was already bright outside, and upon checking the time, I realized it was already past noon. This might have been the first time I slept in so long since getting married to James. Just as I was about to doze off again under the quilt, the doorbell rang abruptly. With doubt, I headed towards the entrance, and upon opening the door, unexpectedly, James and his in-laws appeared before me. "Huh, why are you all here?" I asked, puzzled. Although I hadn't told them about acquiring this new residence, I wondered how they knew the location. Without answering my question, the three of them intruded into my house and suddenly spread a document in front of me. "What is this?" James demanded. "You've changed the name on the house loan without permission. Why are you so surprised?" "I no longer live in that house, and we're not family anymore," I replied. "Even so, this is so sudden," James retorted. "It seems that right after I left the house, they received documents regarding the change in the loan name. James and his parents were evidently shocked by the contents. We're currently unemployed. How are we supposed to pay such a high monthly loan? Besides, it's unthinkable to cover this amount with our meager pensions. James's parents expressed these excuse-like words towards me while James nodded in agreement. Indeed, it was a fact that we had overspent due to our somewhat luxurious idea when building the house, but who had been spending their days doing nothing, living carefree without any knowledge. Were they trying to forcibly take over the house under my name? If they had thoroughly understood the details of the loan, they wouldn't have acted like this. As I remained silent, James, with an angry expression, crumpled up the documents. Don't forget, we won't pay this amount. Absolutely not. Furious, he threw the documents on the floor. See, this issue isn't just about monthly payments. If you default, interest and late fees will be added to the amount, and the final payment can end up being much higher than the initial amount, I explained. What is that? How do loans work? James asked, confused. Well, many people set up proper repayment plans to avoid defaulting, so you may not realize it in daily life. But in reality, the risks of defaulting are significant. Just because of that, it's unbelievable to think the amount would increase so easily. If you're doubtful, you might want to look it up on the internet or bank information. It'll be easier for you to understand. Initially, James seemed skeptical, but he took out his smartphone and began searching for related information. A few seconds later, his expression turned into one of shock and distress. Alice peeked over James's shoulder at the smartphone screen, appearing equally astonished. If this amount is true, what should we do? She asked. That's why it's crucial to get accurate information from the beginning and plan the repayments accordingly. This issue is more serious than you anticipated. The faces of James and his in-laws turned even paler. With a deep sigh, Alice spoke again. We can't come up with such a large amount of money instantly. However, there should be some savings or asset allocation between you two. Right. Honestly, there are no savings or assets. James has no stable income, and he's burdened with a substantial debt from gambling. There's no property for us to divide between us as a couple, I explained. James's face turned even paler as the reality was laid out. Therefore, I recommend looking for new employment for a fresh start. Discussing for hours here won't change the facts. After all the years we've spent together, why is this happening? I wish you'd understand our position a bit more, James pleaded. Really? Have you forgotten how much effort we have put in for you so far? I responded. Effort towards me? As far as I recall, there was never any support of any kind from my in-laws. I don't remember any assistance or support towards me, even when I think back. Upon hearing that, all three vehemently attempted to persuade and mend the relationship once again. However, I shut the door to escape their noisy voices and contacted the police. People are shouting outside my house, I reported. I didn't feel anything reporting those whose relations had faded with me. Now they felt like strangers. Following police intervention, the three individuals demonstrating unrest outside my home were escorted away by the authorities. Later on, due to their financial circumstances, it was concluded that they couldn't afford the house mortgage, so they opted to relocate to a reasonably priced apartment on the outskirts of the town to make ends meet. James, Harold, and Alice attended numerous job interviews. Although successful outcomes were rare, somehow James managed to secure a part-time job and was rumored among the locals to be supporting his family with that income. My daily life remained unchanged, and I dedicated myself to my job. During my free time, I began writing a blog related to handmade crafts. Surprisingly, this blog garnered a lot of attention, and my monthly income increased to more than double the previous amount. Moreover, requests for me to serve as an instructor for workshops and courses related to handmade crafts have been increasing. Currently, I have no thoughts of remarrying and plan to firmly walk through life on my own from now on. One day, I found an old household account book among some old documents. It was from the early days of my marriage to James, during a financially hard time when we meticulously recorded our expenditures. This brings back memories. We documented every little expense. As I looked through the account book, I reminisced about those challenging days, but that's all in the past now. With a sense of resolve, I decided to build new happiness on my own. And once again, I placed the account book back on the shelf.